Hello, friends, and welcome to Worldbuild with us, the podcast where we create fantastical worlds with help from you, our listeners. My name is Rob Hilferty, and I'm here with my co-hosts Daniel Quinn and Courtney Staples. On today's episode, we are finishing up our roundabout in the weird blood cave glowing city thing, as per our patron Diploraptor's instructions. Last episode was a trip, and we started off with a twist, which was aliens did it. But before we get into today's episode, I want to remind everyone that if you want us to build your world, you can go to our website, worldbuildwithus.com, and submit a link. Or you can go to our Discord, where we now have a little link that allows you to submit straight from the Discord. Also, we have a Discord. If you want to follow us on social media, we are over on Twitter at Let's Worldbuild. And if you're feeling particularly generous, like Diploraptor, you can go to our Patreon with a link for that in the description. By the way, Patreon episodes continue to come out. I don't say this enough, but you get the episodes, the podcast episodes, at least a week early. You get exclusive patron content. And if you submit a prompt, you get priority over people who aren't patrons, along with like other Discord bonuses and stuff like that. So yeah, that's our Patreon. If you want to give us more money or any amount of money, we always thank you so much for doing that. And enough of the shilling, on to the episode. So last we left off, our twist was aliens did it. And Courtney, how did you reconcile that twist?
So I was actually thinking that the humans are actually aliens on this planet, encroaching on the natural habitat of the completely innocent psychic bat spiders.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've now turned this movie, we've turned it into the movie Pitch Black starring Vin Diesel. Okay. I'm kind of into it.
Yeah. I didn't have it super built out. I was just thinking that somewhere in the past, it could be like quite a long time ago, maybe the current human inhabitants have even kind of forgotten their origins, but at some point, somehow humans had traveled through space to this planet, colonized it to some extent, and this is the remnants of that.
I see. Interesting. Daniel, what did you think of the twist?
I had similar feelings, except I didn't want it to be straight sci-fi in this traditional sense. So I thought perhaps the city is in fact a starship that's embedded in this place, but it's not your typical kind of starship. It's like a spelljammer sort of thing, and we're dealing with like a science fantasy sort of realm. So you're traveling not through space, but the psychic domain or something.
Oh.
And this realm we're in it's lodged in some other realm at the moment.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I like the idea that the humans are the travelers, and they're impinging on this alien place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that unfortunately really clashes with mine, which is the sun goddess as we know her is not a goddess at all, but just a very powerful alien entity. And we talked about the chrysalis like the ziggurat being a chrysalis last time.
Right.
And I was like, oh, well, eventually it's going to curl out and then a giant face hugger is going to come down. But actually, I made sure that the sun goddess is still good in some way. Like,
yeah,
she still requires, like blood and psychic energy for her to metamorphosize, but she's still generally good. I am not going to have her plop down and then, chest burst out of some other alien god entity. That's not what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
I mean, we could still use that. Like perhaps, one of the aliens was taken on board or something when they got there, and there's some kind of symbiosis that was originally intended.
Mm-hmm.
It could also be that the sun goddess herself, maybe it was some other kind of creature or sentient being, and this metamorphosis is brought on by them coming to this realm, this kind of underdark cave and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the humans saw this change and they were like, that must be a goddess, because look at what it's doing. It's providing us light and stuff like that.
Yeah, it could have even been like an accidental discovery about the whole blood thing. Like maybe at some point blood was spilled in that area, and then things started to like very subtly glow, and they realized that, oh, the more blood we give this the more light we get.
Start cutting.
And the more protection we get from the
yeah,
outside.
exactly.
Yep.
I mean, we said that like there's a structure in the city that's not designed like the city. It's that ziggurat thing in the middle. I mean, if the city itself was some sort of vessel that arrived there, and the ziggurat is native to this place, which has the queen in it, maybe she's like the slake moth queen, and they're interfacing with her like was a positive thing originally, but now because the moths are separated from their queen, there's some kind of animosity.
They've lost control, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, that is kind of interesting. So it's almost like if the glow wasn't there and the weird illithid spider bats were there, like it would actually be fine. But the fact that the glow is there prevents them from being like under the hive mind of the goddess, essentially.
Right. And so like in a way they're using her power, but she doesn't, cool. She's not intended to be used that way, and the ship itself is an impediment to them.
Right.
Yeah. Maybe like their use of her and their sacrifice of blood to her is actually changing her in some way. Like she was originally supposed to kind of metamorphosize into something else, but because humans arrived and are giving her their life force, she's been twisted in some way.
Yeah, she's imprinting on humans now instead of the weird slake moths that we were talking about last episode.
Like maybe that's the nature of a queen. Like, how like in any hive, a queen has special status and ability. Maybe part of it is their queens, like they imprint on the psyche of the thing that feeds them. And so she's every time there's a person who like, because we have the annual sacrifice, who like interfaces with her in that way, it moves her closer to humanity and further away from slake mothdom.
Right, which again I don't think is necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
I think that we want to try and take like morality of good and evil out of this. It's just that this metamorphosis is different than the usual cycle, and that is causing massive disruption as a result,
Yeah, like the moths, there may be a subset that find this interesting. There may be the majority of them that don't like this and they find it a profane, like, so it all matter of perspective in this case.
Yeah. Remember that they're not in fact moths, but they are in fact horrible eyeless spiders that also have bat wings or can make bat wings out of their silk. So I just want to bring that up because I think moths are kind of cute overall. I don't think that these weird abominations are in any league next to a moth. So I want to make sure that that's clear.
Yeah. I mean, he was saying slake moths, like Perdido style.
No, I get that. Like, because they're feeding on psychic energies and stuff like that. I just want to make sure that we're on the same train about these horrifying.
I'm definitely picturing something far more horrific in my mind when I say that. But I agree with you. I think moths are cute. My wife hates moths. She hates them.
Why? Like, why is
she
that?
just doesn't like them. Like, she's murderous against them. I don't mind them.
Wow. Does she like butterflies though?
Yeah, she likes butterflies.
Well, that's wow. That's
See, I actually had to kill a bunch of moths because we got pantry moths when we were gone on our trip.
Oh, those are the worst.
Yeah, so we ended up getting a bunch of glue traps, and it was like a fucking bloodbath. But like, I bear no ill will towards moths otherwise. Like,
I mean, other than them eating sweaters, but that's about it.
Yes, yeah. But I'm generally the type of person who will like let spiders and like mustache bugs kind of like chill and live because I'm like, hey, you're doing the good stuff for us,
What are mustache bugs?
They're those things. They're like house centipedes.
Oh, those things are fucking terrifying.
They look terrifying.
I know that they're fine, but
I hate those.
They look creepy as shit.
They're better than fine. They are actively eating all of the pests within your home.
I know.
Yeah,
but they're
nightmares.
Look like
they look nightmarish. Yeah, no, I get it. They can't help that they look spooky, okay? Like, I remember making a joke with my wife from like, he can't help it. He doesn't understand that he's terrifying to us. Like, so and again, all they do is eat pests. So I'm 100% pro mustache bugs.
So what I'm hearing here is that we should have a giant house centipede type creature in this
I
world
would genuinely like that. Yeah, I have no problem with that. I think centipedes are cool. And I mean, like, in a fantasy sense, right? Like, I think centipedes as a monster are, like, the perfect D&D monster as like a low level or even like a mid-level type of monster. Especially if you've seen the giant ones that eat like rats and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Those are horrifying.
They
Dear
are.
God. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we should add a little bit more centipedes here. I'm sure we can, you know what? I'm sure that we can add some centipedes somewhere to this story. Daniel, where do you think we should add centipedes?
I mean, there's lots of dark spaces out in the wilds where we said there were monsters, so that's pretty easy.
Yeah.
Does anyone have a centipede-based faction by any chance?
Unfortunately, no. Missed that opportunity.
Damn.
Nope.
All right. Well, there's one segue gone. I guess that's someone else. Daniel, start us off with your faction today, then.
Would you like a faction that lives in the city or a faction that lives outside the city?
My faction lives outside the city, so why
Okay.
don't you have yours in the city and we can
Mine's
go there.
also in the city.
Okay. So I was thinking about things you can do with the Sunstone. And I'm like, well, I want like glow in the dark Jedi Knights. So I thought like you've got to have these zealous clerics that defend the city from all the night creatures, right? And it's some kind of fighting force in there because the world is the night is dark and full of terrors, right? So I thought perhaps there are these like Jedi Knight type characters who train and worship the goddess, and they shape the Sunstone into these weapons that they can take into the dark and fight with. And they only glow for so long, right? Because the Sunstone, we know, dims. So they only have so long to get out there and do whatever they have to do. But they're like, righteous, and they have like cool golden armor and stuff. And they're monk-like. So it's pretty straightforward. We can twist that if you like, but that's the basic.
So they're space paladins.
They're space paladins,
basically.
yeah. Glow in the dark
Okay.
Jedi, yeah.
Do they have when they take out their space laser swords, right?
Yep.
Do they make proprietary noises that we would get sued by Disney if we played?
Well, so it'll be like legally distinct noises. So instead of like the noise, it's like, when you turn on like a really powerful lamp and it makes that humming noise instead of the buzzing noise, it's closer to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I gotcha.
Okay.
Who can do their best lightsaber impression?
I'm not good with sound effects.
Yeah, me neither.
Oh wow, you guys suck. How are you on a podcast that uses your mouth noises and you're not even willing to give it a shot?
No.
You know what? I want you at least to try. I want to hear you at least try, and we can
God.
keep it in.
No.
And that's content. This is what happens when you're on a podcast. You're now a content farm.
Let me see if I can find a sound effect to cheat this somehow. Hold on.
No, you need to use your mouth in order to do this.
It's just
not
it
like
makes
you
like
can
a
cheat it.
vroom noise. That's what Jedi's
Like a vroom
do.
noise.
It's like
Okay,
like a vacuum
you know what?
cleaner.
I'll break the ice. I will
Okay.
break the ice. I know
Okay.
that I'm tormenting you both right now.
Yeah.
I will break the ice, and I will start with vroom. Like that's the
That's
best
pretty
that I got.
It's like that kind of thing.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
good.
that was good.
That's good. That's really good. Yeah. Courtney, what does your lightsaber sound like?
God, I hate you.
I will scour the shame off of you, I swear.
I was hearing more of a kind of thing, like
Ooh, it's quieter.
well,
That sounds like that sounds like the like a wind brushing near me.
like a more like modulation. It may be like
Oh, okay.
Oh,
okay.
like
Yeah,
on,
okay.
basically. Yeah.
yeah, when they're like turning on. Yeah.
Mhm.
So we need like more vibrato, like more vibration in that.
Yeah.
Okay, I gotcha.
I'm thinking like, when you have like a really powerful flare or something, it's probably like that, or just like glow. It like kind of glows a lot. It makes glowing noise. I don't know.
Mhm.
Okay. Yeah, I can get down with
Yeah.
that. That's fine.
I could see that being really cool for like a game to run where you have a set amount of time and your
Mhm.
light sword, totally not a lightsaber, it gets like dimmer and dimmer over time.
Yeah.
And it gets darker and more claustrophobic as you adventure on.
Yeah.
Well, see, that's why I have my faction, which are a group of rangers
Oh.
who work with the city but are not of the city. Similarly to Daniel, I thought that we were going to be in the same kind of boat, and I was actually about to be really mad. But my group are essentially ranger. I was thinking about the people who are living not in the city,
Yeah.
right? there are people, I'm assuming they're like nomadic groups who are kind of like doing their own thing. Some don't know about the city, some do. So there's got to be a group of people who are out there protecting humanity against the things that skitter in the Underdark. So there's this group, they're essentially rangers, and they utilize bioluminescent material to
Nice.
they essentially use it as like tattoos, or use it in their armor, in their clothing and stuff like that. So they can be mini beacons, and they can also, it helps them see. Because they're not of the city, they don't need the sunstone to like kind of live, and they don't need to see the glow or anything like that. But they're also the people who, they drive people towards the city, and they say, this is a place of hope, this is a place of safety, if you're willing to pay the price. If you're willing to pay the blood tithe, you can go and live there in relative safety, compared to this horrible nightmare expanse of the Underdark.
I love the bioluminescence, because I can picture them finding
Yeah,
like
it's
glowing sea slugs and like wrapping it around their wrists or something, weird stuff like that.
yeah.
And it's like blue as opposed to the gold.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I was thinking some kind of a moss as well, so you can
Mhm.
have like even a pink color as well.
It's probably dimmer.
Or maybe even like their diet could impact it, like if they eat bioluminescent stuff enough that they start to glow themselves.
That's cool.
Kind
That's
of like
pretty
how
cool.
how like flamingos, they get their really vibrant pink color
From all the
eating
shrimp they eat, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. We can definitely do something with that. I just imagine this group being like a bunch of hardened badass survivalists, and then they're essentially shepherds who bring people in,
Like
and the city
preppers.
mayor. What's that?
They're like preppers, basically.
Kind of, but like more benevolent.
Yeah.
Like they're
Less
not like
solo.
just trying.
Yeah.
They're not trying to just hunker down and like take care of
Right.
themselves. They're the ones actively wandering,
Mhm.
the landscape, looking for people to save and make sure that they're okay.
One question I have for you then is like, why do they prefer the dark? Like, why don't they themselves try and join the city? Is there something that keeps them out there that they like?
They like the wilderness. They like the ability to move around. They think that the cities are stifling. It's kind of the difference between people who are city folk and people who are, want to go out and live in the mountains. And these are the people who want to live in the mountains, except there's also a subset of people who, they think that they can help. They think that they can genuinely make a change in the world
They're
by
like
helping these people.
Aragorns, Underdark Aragorns.
Exactly. Yes.
That's what
I
I'm
actually
picturing.
had that in mind.
Yeah, that's what I'm picturing.
Yeah.
He's got like the bioluminescent bits of armor, so it's like they're stealthy and they glow just enough,
Yes. Well, I imagine that you can also cover up the parts that are
Yeah,
bioluminescent
if you
if
have
you
to.
need to.
Yeah, that's cool because you can see that in the game too. Like, imagine your stealth mission. Like, all right, you got to decide when to turn your lights on and off.
Yes. Yeah. I can also imagine, like, if we wanted to bring in the centipedes, like I would like to, we can have them like use chitin armor or something like that, because I feel like that would be thematically appropriate, especially because they're essentially scavengers as well, along with the centipede.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, and they could also take venom from the centipedes and like coat their weapons in that.
That's a good point as well. Yeah.
I bet that the glow in the dark Jedi are kind of a pain in the ass to them because they just roll in there shining real bright, directing all their crap to them, and they're trying to sneak around and get people safe. And these bastards, they just ruin everything because they're so bright.
I partially agree with that, but I think that because there's both like a benevolent side to both of them.
Oh yeah.
I imagine they're like, oh, thank God you're here. Take these people off of
back.
me. I have like, and get out of here. I have more people to find,
I could see a buddy cop situation where like, like one of the glow in the dark Jedis gets lost from his group and his stuff is all gone dark. And now he gets found by one of the ranger types, and he teaches him more about how to survive in the dark without the sunstone. And then he learns also a little bit more about civilization from that guy, and vice versa,
Yep. And then one of them is only one day from retirement.
Yes.
Right? It's like their last ride.
Oh, that's a great line.
I like it.
Yeah.
This also makes me wonder about like the people who are living outside the city, and if it was like a spacecraft that landed at some point in the past, why are those people out there? Maybe they come from some faction that initially split off because they didn't like the sun goddess concept. They were freaked out by it. They were like, you guys have fun with that. We're going to go out and forge your own path out here.
Maybe they know the true lore.
Well, I
They're
think it could
elders.
also be something. I think it could be also something like the part with the goddess that crashed. That was like the essentially the no. Okay, so I'm going to bring up a Star Trek reference.
Really?
So you know how in TNG, like you see the things separate for what is essentially the first time, right?
The saucer from the Enterprise?
Yeah,
Yep.
you see the. So imagine that the saucer is the city, but there's still a shit ton of people that are still left in the other bit, right? Yeah. So imagine that, like whatever part is least populated is the part that like got jammed into the beacon of the city, and the rest crashed somewhere else on the planet. And so
there's
now
fragments of the ship throughout the planet.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool.
And so maybe they tried to like stay in place and hunker down, and then that worked out to varying degrees of success. And then eventually, but the beacon city is the one that's like, no, this is the one. This is the city like that you go to, you know, because I like Courtney had kind of a issue understanding what these other people were doing out there, you know.
I like that because you can now have people who have knowledge of the past that are, you know, separated. There's hunks of technology left, and whether you depict the ship as being like classic sci-fi that's actually a ship from space, or if it's some science fantasy where they've like been phased into this underground realm, you know, like you can still have the weird situation where the ship is broken apart.
Yeah, and with the people who are kind of outsiders, maybe there's some kind of cultural taboo that has kind of come in. Like I remember last episode, we said that we didn't want to use metal, and maybe the people outside of the glowing city or the Golden Dawn are like the people who are using metal because that's what their ship had, or pieces of that ship had, or something like that.
It also gives a good opportunity for like larger settlements outside of the the rather than just tiny little groups.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like if there was an engine in particular that broke off with survivors, maybe that engine is still being used, but as like a power source for a smaller city or larger town type thing.
Yep.
As long as we don't end up with cities in any way comparable to the main one.
Oh, no,
Because
no,
that was one of our tenants.
Yeah.
I'm picturing like a little like shitty like junk city
Yeah.
versus this like glowing like majestic stone.
It's a metropolis.
Yeah.
Yeah. It, like it's not even the difference between New York and say like Omaha. It's the difference between like New York and like a shack city somewhere,
a trailer park,
you know, like yeah, right. Yeah, actually that's perhaps a more apt you know, kind of metaphor for it. Is like this is the equivalent of a trailer park, but it's still a community and it's still full of people who, you know, are good folks.
No,
yeah,
that makes sense.
Exactly. It's just like in terms of like what the communities might look like, that would work. Yeah. Daniel and I did our factions, Courtney. Why don't you hit us with yours?
All right, so it's kind of interesting because Rob, you had a fully wilderness one. Daniel, yours is kind of like half wilderness, half city, and mine is fully city. I was thinking of a group of acolytes who are very devoted to the sun goddess concept, and they're the ones who are basically as often as possible draining themselves of blood as a sacrifice. So they're the ones who are like really sustaining it for the most part between these annual sacrifices, and picturing them as like pale but not necessarily frail, because I could see that maybe they're given more sustenance than most other citizens because they have such like a high level role.
Interesting.
They're like blood clerics, basically.
I just wanted to bring more blood sacrifice into the setting. So I mean,
yeah,
well, it makes sense. We need the clerical class. So it's like, I guess mine is more like the warrior class for these clerics, but they need like an actual clerical class, you know?
Yeah,
that's close to the queen and the knowledge that's kept there in that ziggurat.
Well, like I said, you're the paladins, you know, you're the crusader type, as opposed to Courtney's priest, or acolyte is an appropriate term. So yeah,
it makes me wonder, is there a parallel in the Rangers?
What do you mean? Like there's
like some kind of shaman type?
Yeah, or something that someone is holding the knowledge on the darkness too.
Interesting.
Huh.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Maybe they're doing some like weird shit with hallucinogenic properties of the centipedes that they take down.
Oh, that's a druid for sure.
Yeah. That would make sense.
I mean, yeah, I could see that. And you know, you can they're the folks out there who are brewing potions of like dark vision. So it's like, you drink this, you're gonna get really high, but you can also see in the dark. You know, or it's like, or actually they're giving out mushrooms that are like, you microdose this and you can see in the dark, but if you take too much, you will trip balls. So don't do it. Actually, I imagine that like tripping on some kind of like hardcore hallucinogen while also looking at a glowing city with a giant like chrysalis would be like an ultra mind fuck. Like, oh my God. You just watching the chrysalis open and bloom like a flower. It's like, oh, wow.
How do you imagine the clerics like looking and being styled?
Oh, good point. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, like pale because they're giving so much of their blood so often, but they're still like well fed and like healthy builds and stuff.
So they're not fat basement nerds, is what you're telling me.
No, they're not fat basement nerds.
What about their clothing? That's what I'm trying to vision.
Yeah,
yeah, it's a good point.
I hadn't really thought too much of that, but I think probably something with like loose drapey sleeves so that they can easily, you know, roll up their sleeves and go to town on their arms.
I was envisioning wrappings around their arms, you know, like something that will,
I guess, like permanent bandages, basically.
Yeah, or like some kind of a ritual bandage, but it's like a nicer. So it's like it's going to stop the blood flow, but it's also, you can peel it back fairly easily and you know, like let that happen.
Yeah, I like that idea. Yeah.
Actually, what would be really cool is they start off blue and through continual bloodletting, they eventually become purple.
Oh, that's cool.
Weird.
I like that.
Yeah,
like that.
Because like you eventually start to bleed on them so much from your healing and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, maybe that's even how they do their ranks, essentially. Like if you're a new acolyte, you're in these like pale blue robes, but the really high ranking ones.
It's exactly what I was thinking. You know, like the more
completely purple.
Yeah, absolutely.
For a moment I thought you meant their flesh.
Oh no!
Like, wow,
that would be
that's
strange.
a lot.
Their clothing. We're just going full alien.
Jeez.
Yeah. No. I meant the wrappings.
Yeah. I like that idea a lot. That's cool.
Yeah, I think that'd be pretty dope.
Oh, and then of course they would need like special sacrificial daggers or knives of some sort. Maybe even they're made out of the same stuff that the paladins make their weapons out of.
Sunstone bloodletters.
Glowing stone, yeah.
I'm trying to think of something like congealed bloodstone or something like that.
Oh, it's a stone made of blood, or that dagger made of blood.
Yeah, that's
mixed with liquefied sunstone.
Or like the stone has absorbed so much of it or something.
Yeah,
it's red sunstone.
So they look like crystalline daggers or something like that.
They glow red.
What I'm curious about, right? The whole thing has a sinister edge to it. So how do we take your acolytes and not just have them look like blood-soaked maniacs all the time? How do we make it so they're like genuine pillars of the community going around and doing good for folks? What are they doing to make sure that they don't look like cultists? That would like that if a D&D group came into this city and they saw them, they'd be like, well, they're evil, they gotta go.
Yeah.
How do we make it so those murder hobos might pause for a second while looking at this group?
Maybe they're also the healers of the city. Like they're the ones with healing magic or some sort of healing skill.
Actually, thematically appropriate considering that they hurt themselves consistently to give blood.
Yeah.
I've also got something that can help. They're all young adults, children, no older than underneath 18.
That's not helping because that's just an indoctrinated like religious.
It will stop the murder hobos because then they'll be murdering children.
Nope. No, that doesn't stop.
It'll just make the murder hobos murder everybody else.
That's true. They'll murder everyone
to save the children.
Yeah, no, that's not going to work, Daniel. Alternatively, it would make it look like we're in some kind of like Maze Runner / like Hunger Games situation where it's like, how dare this government
at least save the children.
Yeah, like the children are cut up and bloody. We got to take this government down. It's like, no.
I save the children at the expense of everyone else in the city.
Yeah, maybe just be not doing that. So I like the healing aspect.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something else that I think might work as well. Is these are missionaries who go down into the areas of the city that are dusky, so like on the cusps, and they're the ones who are handing out food to the people who are like maybe newer to the city, haven't found their footing yet. Maybe they're also the people who are in charge of finding people homes who are new to the city, or creating homes in some way. That might be an interesting way to kind of ease the evilness out of them.
Yeah. And something else too, which might give weird vibes, but bear with me. If they're like the sort of midwives of the city, taking the blood that
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, the blood that is spilled during childbirth, and also offering that to the goddess. But they're, obviously taking really good care of the mothers in the situation.
There's just blood everywhere.
I get it. You could have easily went into like sacrificing babies there.
No.
I'm glad that you didn't. Another part of that ritual that I think is really important is giving the blood of the children right away, so they're part of the city, so they could not be afflicted by
it's like baptizing them.
Yeah, exactly.
Baptizing in blood, that's pretty brutal.
Well, I mean, but remember, I'm making sure that everything that we're looking at is good.
Oh no,
because,
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Quote unquote.
It is really all about perspective, because
yes.
I mean, I don't see them as like questionable in their role. They're definitely serving the community.
No, not at all. Yeah. I just want to make sure that we have literal virtue signals, so people don't immediately come in here and murder the fuck out of everyone.
Well, the key, I think, with this class is preventing there from being any form of coercion in joining this class. Yeah. Like, you have to somehow incentivize people to become clerics in a way that doesn't involve indoctrination.
Right. And I think that's where the charity work really comes in. It's like, wow, look at all the good that they get to do for the community.
Like, you want to be one because you'd be respected for the work you do, as opposed to it being part of your doctrine that becoming one is the right thing to do.
Right. Yeah.
And on top of that, it's also you have genuine purpose by giving back to the community and supporting your community. So there's a lot of good to be done there as well.
Yeah, exactly.
I think our factions are pretty solid here, y'all. I think that we somehow it worked out perfectly that we've got wilderness faction, city faction, interstitial faction. That worked out remarkably well. So good job, everyone here. I think it's time for us to roll into our main quest. How do we feel about that?
Let's do it.
Yep.
Okay. And Daniel, you've already been spitting out like plot hooks and adventure ideas all over the place. So why don't you get us started off here? Where do you feel the main quest lies?
Actually, one thing, is it gross to bring up menstrual blood as like a thing? Make it more of like a matriarchal kind of society?
It doesn't bother me.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me either.
I just know that some people are sketched out by it.
Fuck them.
Well, yeah, they're gonna have to deal with it.
Okay, all right.
Courtney, if they're grossed out by the menstrual blood and not the child sacrifice,
well, there's no child sacrifice. Whoa. There's no child sacrifice. Let's clarify that.
No, but I made a joke about child sacrifice.
I know.
So it's like, also, if they're not grossed out by the skittering, like, eyeless, like, bat spiders,
demon bats,
but they're like, okay, I love your series, except when Courtney mentioned menstrual blood once. Like, that's not okay. It's like, then fuck off, dog. Like, you're in the wrong podcast, man.
Yeah.
Also, one of the rare times where Courtney is adding that 30% of blood come in semen. So, yeah. Daniel, you really got to pull your weight, man. You really got to start like adding more. Like,
gross.
We need at least more fluids from you. That's all.
I don't do biological horror. No thanks.
Well, you're missing out. I hate to say it, but you're missing out.
It's all you guys.
Well, I'm glad that Courtney and I can do it at least. Yeah. Anyway, one thing I do want to point out is that you mentioned that it's called the Blood Cave in the Google Calendar, I just want to point out that is a really unfortunate name.
No,
and we're also talking about
Caverns.
menstrual blood here.
Yeah.
So
blood caverns, slightly
in all caps, though. That's important.
You got blood cave and blood caverns.
We even have like the goop egg from that's the chrysalis that's in the ziggurat.
Oh my god, you're not even wrong, Daniel. Oh my god.
Wait, so is this planet just like a giant like vagina uterus situation?
Yeah, it's a metaphor. Yeah.
And then the sacred ceremony is bringing a giant jade egg into it.
Yeah, so like think about it. The Rangers are like the little sperms, and they're carrying along the future of humanity into the womb.
And you said you couldn't do body fluids.
But what are the moth thingies or the spider monsters? Are those like
literal crabs?
Are they crabs?
Yeah, they're literal crabs. Yeah,
they're STDs. That's what they are.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Right.
Well, yeah, because they're draining the life force out of the otherwise healthy body. So
exactly.
Yeah. Courtney, I just want to point out that this is entirely your fault. So
I know, I'm aware.
Yeah. Before Courtney interrupted us with blood cave stuff. Daniel, you were going to tell us where you wanted to start us off with this main quest.
The question is what I see as the principal characters, I guess.
Right. I mean, guide us. Who's the character here? Who's the positive force?
I feel like there's a missing component. So like I feel like it couldn't be. I don't want it to be someone in the city that's straightforward, or at least that's always in the city. I think, and there's a group of people I would like to introduce. People, we had talked briefly about the horrifying spider monsters cocooning people and then changing them in some way and then letting them go. I thought maybe we have people who were from the city who had that sort of encounter and now are going back, and they've learned something about the spider monsters that makes them less monstrous despite their horrific experience. And they carry perhaps with them some consciousness of the spider creatures in them.
Okay. That is an interesting place to start. I want to throw in my concept, and then maybe Courtney, you can throw in your concept, and then we can blend them all together in some kind of glorious stew. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
All right.
Glorious menstrual stew.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what you wanted, right? I gave it to you.
That's an excellent soundbite right there.
I completely agree. That's staying in. I love it.
God.
Anyway, I had this idea that we could have, and this is going to sound kind of dark. It's a cattle drive. So if we want to have the Rangers essentially act as like a cowboy type or something like that, you can have them driving people from, like, it's the largest group of refugees or largest group of settlements that they've ever found. And they're like, okay, we've got to get this, I don't know, let's call it like 60 people through this really dangerous, treacherous part of the Underdark that is just covered in, like the skittering illithid things that Daniel liked so much. And that's just like one part. Like, that's the story, is this group of Rangers has to come together and help this group of survivors get to the city. It's over the most dangerous part. And like, that's basically what I've got so far. It's simple. It is classic, and it is rife for all sorts of like intrigue and fuckery going on, not just with the monster attacks and stuff like that, but within the group themselves. Maybe there's some, infighting and stuff like that. Maybe there is always this one character who's like shoves an innocent in front of like the saw blade to make sure that it's safe, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And Courtney, what about you?
I wanted to hear her thing before I react to that.
Yeah. No, I'm trying to think of what would make another like good component to this, because I can definitely see how you're both fit in together. Maybe there's something to do with, as the ranger group is traveling, they're also trying to like cleanse the land in a way, and maybe this would bring in Daniel, your paladin type class, but maybe there's some sort of ritual that like obviously would involve blood, because obviously that they can do to sort of cleanse the caverns of the bat spiders.
Interesting.
Maybe it involves the blood crystal things that we had talked about with the acolytes.
Okay.
Like planting those as almost beacons in the caverns.
Or maybe finding out that those weapons are particularly effective against the spider bats.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Imagine they would be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe an acolyte was brought on with the Rangers because they anticipated needing a lot of like healing for the people as they traveled. And then during that process, they realized how effective the blood crystals were.
Mm-hmm. That's not a bad idea.
Mm-hmm.
But because what we're going to see, if that's the case, is an evolution towards blood swords at some point.
Mm.
So just want to throw that out there. Keep that in mind. We're going to have blood weapons. And then we're like one dark cloak away from a 90s, like really edgy character. And I'm totally cool with that.
Yes.
Daniel, what do you think of this gumbo we got going on here?
I feel like there needs to be a twist here in that, you know, they are prepared with this combination of the acolytes, the sun sword people, the rangers guiding them, but there's something they didn't anticipate about these spider monsters that requires that person who has been touched by them.
Yes.
And perhaps, you know, it's that, you know, the spider monsters aren't one just soup of evil. There's like different factions in them.
Oh,
and
yeah, that's
I don't
good.
know
That's
if,
a good idea.
Yeah, like maybe the ones who have been touched by them that have like psychic powers maybe have some sort of premonitions, that because perhaps the faction that is not against the humans believes in whatever's happening to the queen will like change their whole society, like the chrysalis she's undergoing. So maybe like in a way they're helping the psychic people who have been changed, and they're helping guide them through the caverns too. So like they can find the right path through it, and the while the rangers can deal with the dangers inside that path, and the acolytes and the knights can fight those dangers. Like, so they're all working in concert.
Yeah, I think, and when you say twist, I love I thought the same thing you did, which is you bring in those people who have been touched by the spider bats, and you know there's going to be like a subsection of them within the group. Everyone's going to look at them with distrust, and then they eventually earn that trust back by being like, no, there's something going on here you don't know about.
Right.
And then of course, if we're going to be really big and climactic about it, I think what might end up happening is, you know, again, I can't help but think of this in like a trilogy style, right? Where the first book is you're introduced to the setting, the spider bats, and like a mass slaughter that happens, right?
Yeah.
You only have the perspective of, you know, like the very narrow paladin or the very narrow ranger or something like that. Or actually, it would probably be paladin, right? Like you're fighting off this wave and waves and waves of the spider bats. Book 2, episode 2 is you get the perspective of the ranger, who are guiding all these people from this besieged settlement, you know, along with that paladin from the first book. And then book 3, episode 3 is going to be, you get the perspective of the people who have been touched by the weird spider bats.
Right.
And you get a much broader understanding of what's actually going on within the setting itself.
Yeah.
And then the climax
can be revelation.
Yeah, right. And then the climax is, of course, them letting some of the spider bats into the city and like letting this light die out for just a moment, so those spider bats can also have a moment of osmosis with this goddess that's going on, you know? It's a broad, sprawling fantasy epic, all in the Underdark, and I'm totally here for it.
I like it. And maybe even the reason why that faction of spider bats was trying to get into the city in the first place was to like sacrifice themselves to their goddess figure,
to contribute their blood
right.
to the transformation. Yeah.
So that faction at least wasn't like trying to hurt the humans. They just wanted to get to their like goddess queen figure.
Right.
Yeah. And so there's now a bridge between them through these people who have been touched, because you don't fear them innately. Like you can talk to these people as humans. And so that's a way for them to be a bridge between the two.
Yeah. And those folks know the difference between, you know, like the Blood Razor clan compared to like the Baby Eater clan or whatever the fuck, you know?
Baby Eater clan.
Right.
Oh, I could even see an encounter, like, so when you're making your way through the Underdark stuff, you're running away with the group, and they encounter one of the spider creatures, but it doesn't attack them, and they actually commune with it because the touched person goes up to it, and they're like, "Oh no, you're gonna get killed," but they actually commune with it, and there's like
Of
this
course.
moment,
Of course, that's what fiction is there for. When you're like, you feel like and you like tense up a little bit, and then you're like, oh, actually, it's okay, it's fine. Oh my god! And then maybe that might be even big revelation for people as well. They're like, oh, I've never seen them not instantly murder someone. How about that? Well,
yeah.
I don't know. Okay. The climax, right? We got to get to the climax here. The climax is, of course, the sun goddess finally coming out of its pupa form, right? And ascending into its evolved form. What do we think that's going to be? Is it going to be like a Butterfree? Is it a bee drill?
Dear God.
I'm trying to think of other Pokemon references, but I'm going to leave it up to you guys. What do you think the next step is going to be, is what I'm trying to say.
I don't even know.
I don't know if I want to know.
Like leave it a mystery. Yeah.
There's always potential to come back here for a sequel as well. So
yeah,
maybe the main quest is just like the idea that there is now peace between some of the spider bats and the regular folk. I'm cool with that.
Maybe the trilogy ends on like a cliffhanger to lead up to another trilogy, because you don't know exactly what the goddess is going to actually be, so you find that out later.
Yeah, I mean, you can have a satisfying conclusion to getting the spider creature in the chamber, contributing itself, and we don't know what the result will be, what the transformation will be, but just the understanding among the acolytes that something will change fundamentally about their society going forward.
Yeah, maybe that's a great point, Daniel. It's like maybe the ending is, okay, we know that this is going to affect things, and then everyone holds their breath, and then the camera cuts.
Yeah, because I can see the creature walking through the glowing city, and it's never been in the city, and it's dying because the city's killing it, but it wants to walk up to the chamber, and it sacrifices itself into the chamber, and that's where we're
absolutely. Or maybe it doesn't even necessarily have to sacrifice itself. Maybe it's just there to offer its blood, or its blood equivalent, Yeah. Y'all, I think that's a successful series. I don't know about you. I'm ready to see this right up until like season 6, because we all know season 7 and 8, that's where it goes downhill.
No.
You gotta cut it out early. You gotta shut it down before it gets stale.
Yep, exactly. That's why, to me, the Game of Thrones books are the perfect trilogy. With that, that will do it for this episode of World Build with us. Remember that if you want us to build your world, you can always go to our website, worldbuildwithus.com, or you can go to our Discord and submit prompts there. We're trying to make it as easy as possible for you to submit new and interesting worlds for us to build. If you want to follow us on social media, we're over on Twitter at Let's World Build. And if you're feeling particularly generous, like Diploraptor did, you can always give us money over on Patreon and access all sorts of cool stuff, including patron-only episodes. That's it for this episode of World Build with us. Remember that we love you very much, and we're going to get through this together. Until next week.